All right, let's get right into it. Today we're going to deep dive into game theory
Oh, nice.
using as our source the book The Art of Strategy.
Okay.
And I think our listeners are really going to get a lot out of this.
Yeah, it's really a fascinating area.
Yeah, it's about thinking strategically and making better decisions when, everybody around you is doing the same thing, right? It's like a constant game.
It really is, yeah. It's about understanding that even things that seem irrational
Right.
can actually be a part of, like, a really smart strategy.
Totally.
If you know how to, like, analyze the motivations and potential actions of the people you're interacting with.
Yeah, and it's like we're all playing chess, but most people don't even realize it,
Exactly.
And speaking of chess, that brings us to our first big idea from the book, backward reasoning.
Yeah.
So help me out here.
Yeah.
Explain this one to me.
So, like, chess grandmasters obviously use backward reasoning all the time. But it's not just for chess. It's really applicable to, like, almost any decision
Okay.
where you have to sort of predict how other people might react to your choices.
So instead of just reacting to what's right in front of you, you're thinking about the end goal and then working backwards to figure out the best move to make right now.
Precisely, yeah. It's about anticipating outcomes and then, like, using that knowledge, that foresight, to make the best decisions in the present.
I like it.
Yeah. And the authors illustrate this idea with a fascinating story
Okay.
about the 1983 America's Cup yacht race.
Oh, cool. I've heard of this.
Yeah, the Australian team was trailing behind,
Right.
but they ended up winning
Wow.
because they used a really, really unconventional tactic.
All right. Now you've got to tell me more.
Okay, so the Australian skipper realized that by deliberately breaking a rule,
What?
yeah,
You can do that.
well, he realized by doing that,
Yeah.
he could actually force the American team to have to maneuver around them.
Oh.
And this seemingly crazy move actually gave the Australians a strategic advantage and ultimately led them to victory.
So breaking the rules was actually the smart move.
In this case, yeah, it was a calculated risk that paid off.
Oh, that is mind-blowing.
Yeah,
It really drives home the point that to be successful, you've got to be thinking several steps ahead and considering how your opponent might react, even if your actions seem a little unorthodox.
absolutely. It's about looking beyond the immediate situation
Right.
and considering the long-term implications of the choices that you make.
That's a great takeaway for our listeners. Don't just react. Think ahead.
Yeah,
Ask yourself, what outcome am I trying to achieve?
Right.
What steps do I need to take now to get there?
exactly.
And you might be surprised at the creative solutions you come up with, by using this backward reasoning.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so moving on to our next game theory concept, the prisoner's dilemma.
Ah, yes, a classic.
This one is a classic, and I think everybody's probably been in a situation at some point
I think so, yeah.
where they have to decide whether to cooperate with someone or act in their own self-interest, even if it means, like, potentially screwing the other person over, right?
We've all been there.
It's a tough one.
Yeah, the prisoner's dilemma really perfectly captures that
Yeah.
tension between cooperation and competition.
So could you break down, just for, like, anybody listening who might not be familiar with this, what the prisoner's dilemma is?
Sure. So imagine two people are accused of a crime and they're being interrogated separately.
Okay.
And they each have two choices. They can stay silent
Right.
or they can betray the other person by confessing to the crime.
Okay.
So if they both stay silent, they both get a relatively light sentence.
Okay.
But if one confesses and the other stays silent,
Uh-huh.
then the confessor goes free.
Oh, wow.
And the silent one gets, like, a much harsher sentence.
Oh, that's rough.
And then if they both confess, they both get, like, a moderate sentence.
Huh. Okay, I see the dilemma.
Yeah.
So logically, they should both stay silent.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
They should cooperate and get the best overall outcome.
Exactly. But here's the catch.
Okay.
Each person, acting in their own self-interest,
Yeah.
is tempted to betray the other person, hoping to get off scot-free.
Right.
The problem is, if they both betray each other,
Uh-huh.
they both end up with a worse outcome than if they had cooperated in the first place.
Oh, that's so frustrating.
It is, isn't it?
It's like, even though cooperation is the most logical choice,
Right.
the temptation to betray can lead to both people, losing out.
Exactly. It's this classic example of how individual rationality can lead to collective irrationality.
Yeah, is that kind of what happens in those gas station price wars?
Yeah, that's a great example.
Yeah.
One gas station lowers their price,
Mm-hmm.
hoping to attract more customers, and then the station across the street does the same thing.
Right.
And then they just keep undercutting each other.
Yeah, they're all thinking, like, if I don't lower my price, the other guy is going to get all the business.
Right, exactly.
But then they all end up losing profits, you know?
Yeah, it's a classic prisoner's dilemma.
It's fascinating, though, that even in situations where people interact only once, there's still a surprisingly high rate of cooperation.
Yeah, that's right.
So people aren't always cutthroat.
Not at all. Research has actually shown that people choose to cooperate, even when there's no guarantee of, like, any future interactions.
Right.
It seems like we have this sort of inherent tendency toward cooperation.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's kind of reassuring.
It is.
So what's the takeaway for our listener here? You know, how can they use this knowledge of the prisoner's dilemma?
Well, it highlights the importance of thinking about the long-term implications of your actions.
Okay.
If you're in a situation where you're likely to interact with the same people repeatedly.
Like at work.
Exactly, at work or in social groups, cooperation can actually lead to much, much better outcomes for everyone involved.
So building trust and fostering that sense of cooperation is key.
Absolutely.
But at the same time, you need to be aware that, you know, there's the potential for people to act in their own self-interest.
Right.
And that's where things like contracts and really clear communication come in.
Yeah, for sure.
To help prevent people from, you know, going rogue.
Yeah.
And messing everything up for everyone.
Exactly. It's about finding that right balance between cooperation and self-preservation. And understanding that sometimes working together can lead to the best results for everybody.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. And I think that's a good place to wrap up this section on the prisoner's dilemma. And, you know, I'm curious to move into another area where I think strategic thinking comes into play. And that's how we communicate our intentions and how other people perceive us. So let's talk about signaling.
Yes. Signaling. Yeah.
It's like that old saying, actions speak louder than words.
That's right.
And I think this really applies to so many areas of life, from job interviews.
For sure.
To first dates.
Yeah.
To the way we dress, to, like, you know, the cars we drive.
Absolutely.
It's all sending a message.
It is. It really is. And it's a crucial aspect of strategic thinking.
Okay.
Because it's all about conveying credibility.
So it's not enough to just say you're competent or trustworthy. You have to actually show it.
Exactly.
Through your actions.
Yeah.
But there's a catch here, right?
There is a catch.
What's the catch?
So for signals to be truly believable, they have to be costly to fake.
Okay, give me an example.
All right, so think about car warranties.
Okay.
Offering a warranty is a really strong signal that a car is high quality, because it would be very expensive for the seller of a lemon to offer a warranty.
Oh, that's true.
Right. Like if you knew your car was unreliable, you wouldn't want to risk having to pay for all those repairs.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But if you know your car is in great shape, then a warranty is not so risky. And it actually makes your car more attractive to buyers.
Right. You're putting your money where your mouth is, basically.
Exactly.
It's a way of saying, I'm so confident in this product, I'm willing to back it up.
That's right.
So how does this idea of signaling play out in other areas of life?
Well, think about a job interview.
Okay.
You might have, like, a stellar resume. But if you show up to the interview looking unprofessional or unprepared, you're sending a signal that contradicts those credentials on your resume.
Yeah, it's true. It's true.
Or think about first dates.
Okay.
People spend a lot of time sometimes, you know, choosing an outfit or picking the right restaurant.
Yeah.
Because they understand that these choices send signals about who they are and what they value.
Yeah, it's like we're all playing this subtle game of signaling all the time, whether we realize it or not.
Yeah, we are.
So knowing this, how can we use signaling to our advantage?
Well, it's about being mindful of the signals that you're sending, both intentionally and unintentionally. Ask yourself, what message am I conveying through my actions?
Yeah.
Does it align with how I actually want to be perceived?
So it's about being deliberate and making sure that your actions are reinforcing your words.
Exactly.
I like that.
Yeah.
But now I'm curious about this other idea of counter-signaling that you mentioned.
Yeah.
Can you tell me more about that?
So counter-signaling is kind of a fascinating concept.
Okay.
It's when people who are highly capable of sending a strong signal actually choose not to.
Okay.
Because their reputation or their track record already speaks for itself.
Oh, so it's like those old money families who don't feel the need to flaunt their wealth.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They don't need like the flashy cars and the designer clothes. Like they're so secure in their status that they can afford to be understated.
Right.
Or think about like a world-renowned professor who scribbles their signature illegibly, their reputation for brilliance precedes them, so they don't need to prove it by, having perfect penmanship.
Yeah, it's almost like a signal of even higher status to break the conventions that everyone else feels like they have to follow. It's like saying, I'm so good at this that I don't even need to try to impress you.
That's right.
So how can we apply this concept of counter-signaling to our own lives?
It's about understanding that sometimes the most effective way to signal your strengths is to be subtly confident rather than like overtly trying to prove yourself.
Yeah.
It's about letting your actions and your accomplishments really speak for themselves.
That's a great point. It's about building a reputation that precedes you. So you don't always have to go over the top to prove your worth.
Yeah.
It's a more understated form of confidence.
Definitely.
Okay, so now I want to shift gears a little bit and talk about another really crucial element of game theory.
Okay.
And that's commitment. This is all about making promises, making threats, and sometimes even limiting your own options to achieve some kind of strategic goal.
Yeah, commitment is a powerful tool, but its effectiveness hinges completely on credibility.
Okay.
So, for a threat or a promise to be effective, the other players have to believe that you will actually follow through.
So how do you make a commitment believable? It can't just be empty words.
It can't, no.
Right.
The credibility of a commitment really depends on the costs and consequences involved.
Okay.
So, for example, let's say you're trying to negotiate a better deal on a car.
All right.
Simply saying, I'll walk away if you don't give me a lower price, isn't very convincing.
Right.
Unless the salesperson believes you're actually willing to walk away and go to a different dealership.
Right. So there has to be some kind of consequence for not following through on the commitment, something that makes it more than just an empty threat.
Exactly right. So let's look at a slightly more dramatic example from the movie Reservoir Dogs by Quentin Tarantino.
Oh, okay.
There's that pretty intense scene where Mr. White is interrogating a police officer.
Yeah.
And he wants information, and he starts slashing the officer's face with a razor.
I remember that.
Yeah, and he threatens to set him on fire.
It's a pretty intense scene.
It is, yeah. So how does that relate to commitment?
Yeah, I'm curious.
Well, his actions actually introduce this element of risk and uncertainty.
Okay.
The police officer has no way of knowing if Mr. White is bluffing.
Right.
Or if he's going to actually follow through on his threat.
Right. The stakes are very high.
Exactly. And those high stakes actually make the threat incredibly effective.
That's a chilling example, but I think it really illustrates how actions can speak much louder than words.
For sure.
When it comes to commitment, it's about demonstrating that you're not afraid to incur costs or to face those consequences to achieve your objective. So let's bring this back down to earth.
Okay.
How can we use this concept of commitment in everyday situations?
Well, one way is through contracts. Contracts create a legal framework that binds people to their agreements.
So it's about putting things in writing.
Exactly.
And making sure that there are consequences for breaking those agreements.
That's right. And another way to strengthen a commitment is through reputation.
Right.
If you have a reputation for keeping your word, people are more likely to trust you and to take your commitment seriously.
It's like that saying, it takes a lifetime to build a good reputation, but you can lose it in a minute.
Exactly.
So how can we build that strong reputation for commitment?
It's about consistently following through on your promises.
Okay.
Even when it's difficult or inconvenient.
Yeah.
It's about demonstrating that you're reliable.
Yeah.
And that you have integrity.
So it's not just about the big dramatic commitments,
Right.
but even like the small everyday interactions, being on time for appointments, meeting deadlines, keeping your promises to friends and family.
Absolutely. All of those contribute to building this reputation for trustworthiness.
And sometimes to demonstrate true commitment, you have to be willing to take actions that are like irreversible, actions that essentially burn bridges and make it impossible to back out.
That's right.
Can you give me an example of that?
Sure. Think about William the Conqueror, burning his ships after landing in England in 1066.
Wow.
By eliminating that option of retreat, he signaled to his troops and to his enemies that he was fully committed to victory.
Wow, he was all in.
Yeah, there was no going back.
That's a really powerful example of using commitment as a strategic advantage.
It is.
It's like saying, I'm all in and I'm not afraid to show it.
Yeah, and Hernan Cortez used a similar strategy during his conquest of Mexico.
Oh, really?
He ordered his ships to be scuttled, leaving his men with no choice but to fight and conquer.
Wow, those are some pretty extreme examples.
They are.
But I think they really illustrate how making a bold, irreversible commitment can be a powerful way to motivate yourself and others.
For sure.
So bringing this back to the present day, what are some less dramatic ways we can use commitment to achieve our goals?
Well, one modern approach is actually using websites like the Commitment Store.
What is that?
So these websites allow people to put money on the line to achieve their goals.
Oh, okay.
So for instance, let's say you want to quit smoking. You can make a contract with the site, and if you don't reach your goal by a certain date, you lose your money.
Oh, wow. So it's like an extra layer of accountability. You're putting some skin in the game.
Right. And it harnesses this power of loss aversion, this idea that we're more motivated to avoid losing something than we are to gain something of equal value.
That's fascinating.
It is.
It seems like understanding how to make and keep commitments is essential for success in just about any area of life.
It really is.
Whether it's, negotiating a business deal or starting a new project or even just trying to stick to a workout routine.
Absolutely.
Knowing how to use commitment strategically can make all the difference.
It really can.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground today.
We have.
We talked about backward reasoning, the prisoner's dilemma, signaling, and commitment.
Yeah, lots of good stuff.
And it's amazing to me how these seemingly abstract game theory concepts can actually be applied to so many different situations in real life.
It's true. Game theory provides this framework for understanding human behavior and decision-making.
Yeah.
And the insights can be incredibly valuable.
Absolutely. So to wrap things up, let's distill some key takeaways for our listeners.
Okay.
We started off by talking about the power of backward reasoning.
Yes.
So instead of just reacting to the situation at hand, think ahead to your desired outcome. Yes. And work backward from there. Exactly. Anticipate the consequences of your choices and consider how other people might respond.
It's like having a roadmap for your decision-making.
Exactly. Then we explored the prisoner's dilemma, which showed us that cooperation can be really beneficial.
Yeah.
But it often requires overcoming the temptation to act in our own self-interest.
Right.
And we learned that even in situations where people only interact once, there's a surprising amount of cooperation.
Yeah, it's true.
Which suggests that we're kind of wired for collaboration even when there's an incentive to cheat.
It seems that way, yeah.
Which makes sense because, in the long run, cooperation usually leads to better outcomes for everyone.
Absolutely.
But it also highlights the need for clear communication and mechanisms to prevent people from taking advantage of the system, right?
Right, exactly.
Whether it's through contracts or building a culture of trust or reputation, finding ways to encourage that cooperation is key.
It is.
Then we moved into the realm of signaling, where we talked about how the actions we take send messages to other people.
Right.
Even when our words might be saying something different.
Yeah.
It's about recognizing that every choice we make, from the clothes we wear to the way we interact with others, sends a signal about who we are
for sure
and what we value.
Yeah.
And being aware of those signals can help us to present ourselves in a more authentic and strategic way.
Yeah.
And we even touched on this fascinating concept of counter-signaling, where those who are most capable of sending a strong signal choose not to.
Because they don't need to.
Yeah.
Their reputation and accomplishments speak for themselves.
Exactly. It's a subtle form of confidence.
It is.
It's a way of standing out by not trying too hard.
Exactly.
And finally, we discussed the power of commitment and how crucial it is to make our promises and our threats believable. And we explored different ways to strengthen commitment, from contracts and reputation to taking those bold actions that really demonstrate resolve.
Yeah, actions speak louder than words, especially when it comes to commitment.
That's right. It's amazing how understanding these game theory principles can provide us with such practical tools for navigating the complexities of human interaction.
It's true. Game theory is not just an academic exercise. Yeah. It's really a framework for understanding the world around us and making better decisions in all areas of life.
I couldn't agree more so. For our listeners. As you go about your day, I encourage you to keep these game theory insights in mind.
Good idea.
Think about the commitments you're making, the signals you're sending, the strategic choices that you're facing.
Think about the games you're playing, even if you don't realize you're playing them.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
And remember, even seemingly small decisions can have a ripple effect.
They can.
By applying these principles, you can really level up your decision-making.
Absolutely.
And achieve better outcomes in all areas of your life. So until next time, keep playing the game strategically.
Play the game.
And we'll catch you on the next deep dive.
Sounds good.